good afternoon, wherever you are. While we're waiting to get started, please take our pre-webinar survey. There's a QR code on the screen. Just want to learn a little bit more about where you all are from and what your challenges are with writing. And I will be back with you shortly. Welcome to our webinar. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. While we're waiting for this to start, and we'll get started in just a moment, please go ahead and do the survey that is on the screen using the QR code or typing in the link. We just want to learn a little bit more about you and where you're from and your challenges with writing. Hello, everyone. It's good to see so many people here. Right now, it looks like we have 105 participants. I want to welcome you to this our webinar. Oops, hold on just a sec. Technical difficulties. Mastering Writing Productivity and Tips and Tricks from Pharmacy Faculty. This webinar is being put on by the FIP Academic Pharmacy section, the work group on educator development, and specifically the subgroup on increasing scholarship in pharmacy educators. I am KarenBeth Bohan. I'm your moderator for today, or the first moderator. We have two. And I am from upstate New York. I teach at Binghamton University, and I've been working with a pharmacy school in Kampala, Uganda for many years, since 2011, on a capacity building project to improve pharmacy education and pharmacy practice. And my co-moderator is Nicole Chung. She is a board-certified pharmacotherapy specialist and serves as an assistant professor in the Department of Science Education as a pharmacology educator at the Donald and Barbara Zucker School of Medicine at Hofstra Northwell in New York City. She completed a PGY2 geriatrics pharmacy residency with Upstate University Hospital in New York. And that's how I got to know Nicole as one of her residency preceptors. And I've been working with her ever since. She currently serves on the member of the academic section work group that I just mentioned with FIP, and her research interests include promoting education and healthcare in the local and global community with a focus on geriatric care. Just a couple announcements. This webinar is being recorded and will be put on YouTube after probably within a couple days. You can go to the FIP website to access that. Throughout the program, there is a Q&A box. Please use that for your questions that we will address during the panel discussion. And there is a chat, which you're currently using. Save that just for your introductions to each other, but use the Q&A for your questions. We always welcome feedback at webinars@fip.org. And if you're not already a member of FIP, I'll put a little plug in to join us and get active in a committee. It's a lot of fun. Our webinar today involves small presentations by all of our presenters, which I'll introduce at the time they're presenting. And then we're going to have a panel discussion, and stay around till the end because we do have a post survey and an interesting potential project for you at the end. So our learning objectives today are for the participants to be able to identify common challenges faced by pharmacy educators in academic writing, to be able to discuss strategies, techniques, and tools to prioritize and allocate time towards academic writing, and finally, to develop an action plan using the discussed strategies to improve writing productivity. For those of you who joined just recently, please take note of the QR code, and I believe my co-moderator will put it in the chat as well, and go ahead and take that. And then at the end, there'll be a post survey as well. So let's get started with our first speaker, who is Dr. Bala Tangisuran. And Dr. Tangisuran, I've been working with him for a few years on this FIP committee. He holds the position of Associate Professor in Clinical Pharmacy at the School of Pharmaceutical Sciences, University Sans, Malaysia. He has a Bachelor of Pharmacy and a Master of Clinical Pharmacy from there, as well as a PhD from Brighton and Sussex Medical School in the UK. Bala previously served as the director of the Malaysian National Poison Center and as the program chairman for clinical pharmacy. In addition, he's been designated as a fellow of the World Health Organization Collaborating Center for Drug Information. His area of research and expertise includes drug safety, pharmacy practice research, with a special focus on geriatric care. Bala, I'll let you take it away from here.
Thank you very much, KarenBeth. Good. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. I'm very excited to discuss a topic that resonates with many of us. Let's kickstart by establishing the reason to write. It is promotion or performance metrics or visibility. Well, the key aspect of the culture of scholarship is not only to create new knowledge, but also to disseminate them effectively. However, some of us may face various challenges in scholarly writing that hinders our function. These challenges were grouped into three main categories by Melody Ryan, one of our speakers today, as resources, skills, and emotional-based issues. We shall now ponder all these types one by one, and also briefly ways to tackle them from an individual perspective. The next speaker, Tina, will be talking from a different perspective. Next slide, please. Okay. Now let us explore the resource-based issues. All will agree with the first common challenge that you can see there, that is lack of time. Isn't that this is the most common challenge we always say to ourselves? Picture this, a pharmacy educator balancing teaching, supervision, administration, clinical responsibility. We also do research involved in community engagement, consultation. Finding times for scholarly writing is going to be a big challenge. Don't forget, we still have our personal and family commitment, which are equally important. It is a symphony of responsibility, and timing is everything, isn't that? So naturally, we tend to give low priority to writing, especially if we do not have a mentor to guide us. So what is the solution here? Time management. Identify a protected time and make a calendar appointment for writing. You can write in the morning before work, for example. For those of you from limited resource settings, limited access to journal will be a huge barrier. How are we going to write effectively if we cannot access to articles? A frustration some of us can understand, isn't that? On top of that, access to reliable data, especially from drug trials, nationwide cohort, everything is limited. Especially if you want to write a high-quality, impactful publications. This is further worsened by limited funding, sometimes even to publish in open access journals. But luckily, there are still many journals that do not need publication fees. Anyway, the solution for all of this is very simple: collaboration and strategic partnership. I think this will be discussed in detail later. Another point I forgot to cover here is the workforce, insufficient workforce. It is very difficult to attract dynamic persons with expertise to join academia, for example, leading us to end up burdened with additional workloads. Next slide, please. The second most common challenge category is the skill-based issues. For some of us, limited training in writing and a lack of language skills will be undeniably a big challenge to start writing. Postgraduate training is very important. Look for online research writing and methodological courses. There are a lot of societies are offering this. Don't be shy to connect with established, friendly mentors who can actually provide guidance. Start by being a co-author and learn the tricks from them. This is how I have learned myself as well. The inability to write in fluent English without grammatical errors can be demotivating to oneself, but it should not, I repeat, it should not be a stumbling block for us in this era of technology. Enhance your writing experience by leveraging AI tools. They are perfect for checking your grammars and also language flows. Write daily. Be consistent. That is the key of everything. One of the most common mistakes people make when writing is the lack of organization. Have you ever experienced sitting in front of a computer for hours without writing a single sentence? I'm sure you can say the answer that. It is harder to start writing from nothing. Analyze each writing project and break it into small chunks. I personally practice mapping out my ideas in point forms so that I don't have to be confused about where to start. Time management is the most commonly acknowledged skill deficiency and perhaps the most easily corrected. Next is the lack of accountability. Many aspects of our work have automatic accountability. For example, preparing a lecture for a specific date and time. But do you have a deadline for writing project? It will easily fall prey to the demands of other tasks with deadlines. Skills to manage distraction are very important. Minimize distraction. Please turn off all the alerts, emails, and social medias to concentrate when writing. Next slide, please. Thank you. There are many emotional barriers to writing, and these are often not acknowledged. Negative self-talk is not useful by writing. For some, there is guilt about not making any progress. Do you find difficult to stay motivated? Practice positive affirmation. Set manageable goals. Celebrate small wins. Enjoy the journey. Don't worry about the destination. Are you a perfectionist? Doing multiple edits in the early draft? Don't do that. Concentrate on getting words down on paper. Save editing till the end. Fear being judged and rejection is natural, but it is irrelevant. Repeated cycles of failure and self-promises to improve without the corrective measures should be avoided. Pressure to publish is not helpful. It can lead to panic attacks, going blank, or reinforce pattern of avoiding writing to reduce anxiety. This can get worsened if comes together with psychosomatic symptoms like cramps, headaches, and also dizziness. Persistent determination and passion are some behavioral action that can predict success in writing. All right, let me conclude the talk by sharing my 5C principle as the solution from my perspective. Be confident, take charge, make your choice, start collaborating, and most importantly, be consistent. You can do it, my friends. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bala. Wow, you touched on a lot of important things, many of them that I struggle with myself. So it's kind of a constant progress, to improve your writing. Now I'd like to bring Nicole to the screen so she can talk a little bit about what she found in our survey.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for completing our pre-survey today. Just to get a general idea of where our audience is, So we have roughly about 36 responses, and surprisingly, the majority are actually not faculty members. So that's 66% who report they're not a faculty member. And among that, roughly 34%, most of the faculty are focusing on research, with the second most common faculty being an administrative role. And for the top 3 goals for our participants today are to primarily learn more about writing productivity, to develop motivation and learn more about what type of behavior and mindset we need to improve our writing productivity. And lastly, to apply those skills to enhance your own capabilities and develop excellence, whether in research, writing, or in grant writing as well. In terms of the biggest challenges in research and scholarship productivity, the numbers have been ranging throughout the whole day, but the top 2 tied biggest challenges are time, not surprisingly, as well as research and or funding opportunities, with the second biggest challenge being in mentorship in the research or writing, as well as in collaborative opportunities. So not a lot of people are saying that motivation is a challenge. So we're very excited to hear that. And this is definitely the right place to address some of those challenges. And please stay tuned to learn more about an opportunity to really get into collaboration and improving writing productivity at the end.
Thank you, Nicole. Very interesting to hear where everyone's from and where you are in your stage. And I agree that time is one of my biggest issues as well. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Tina Brock, our second speaker. She's going to discuss some strategies to increase your academic writing. Dr. Brock is an upstream activist for the transformative power of education to improve health worldwide. This work includes modernizing systems to better reflect the current and future academic demography. As the director of the Collaborative Practice Center in the University of Melbourne Faculty of Medicine, Dentistry, and Health Sciences, she supports faculty, practitioners, and students in the science of teamwork and collaboration. In addition, Dr. Brock is one of the founders of a podcast called Pharmacy Fika, which is where pharmacy educators gather to discuss teaching and learning, the scholarship of teaching and learning, and academic life, or otherwise fuel and reflect. So without further ado, I'd like to have Tina take it from here.
Thank you so much. And you can go ahead and advance the slides. Hello, everyone. I'm just delighted to be able to follow Bala. He and I coordinated a bit, and he took the perspective of perhaps, say, early mid-career researcher, and I'm taking the perspective of probably a manager, a supervisor, even a department chair. And I know, because I know some of you who are here with us in the webinar tonight, that some of you are leading others. And so this will be specifically designed for you. Really, one thing I wanted to talk about is normalizing reading amongst your team. And that means talking about reading. It's interesting when I talk to some of my early mid-career colleagues, I think the perspective of reading, is it actually reading from a book? Is it reading from the journal? Is it reading from a screen? Is it listening to a podcast? The most important thing is exposing yourself to lots of different types of writing. And what I began to do when Google Scholar was available, I had started to identify certain types of writers that really their style appealed to me. So it's almost like the Taylor Swift of writing. So somebody who would be very popular. And I, follow that person on Google Scholar, and I read all of their work, and I began to see, how they describe their research, describe their implementation in a really interesting and consistent way. 2 books that are not specific to pharmacy that really helped me were a book by Anne Lamott called Bird by Bird, and it really helped me to just sit down, focus, and approach my writing in a creative way. And I often give this book to my mentees or give them a link to the library. Another is called The Artist's Way, and it taught me to get up in the morning and do something called morning pages, which is getting all the junk out of your brain before you start to do your work. So these are 2, if you have people who on your team and people who report to you that are struggling a bit, these might be like popular ways that you could encourage them to read more, which would make them tend to be better writers. KarenBeth talked a little bit about our podcast that Kristen and I are involved with, and we actually have recently had an episode specifically about academic writing, and it's linked right here. So you can go ahead and advance. The next thing that I wanted to talk about as a leader is really normalizing behaviors that support people for strong writing. At one of my previous places, I was actually talking with an early career academic on my team, and she told me that she had actually asked somebody for some help with her writing, and that person said, well, look, if you don't enjoy writing, maybe you don't need to be in academia. And I really took that to heart to say, hey, writing can be challenging for many, and it can feel very isolating, like you're the only one. So if we as leaders, managers, supervisors, if we talk about this publicly, I think it can really normalize that this can be a challenging skill for some. Another thing that I have found really helpful with my teams is creating, discussing, and periodically reviewing authorship norms. There's some great publications out there that you can follow, but I actually think it's pretty important for each team. And as I've moved around the world, each of my teams, we sort of sit down and we take the actual rules and then we discuss them as a team. And we say, in our team, how are we going to approach authorship? And that's important because I often, even if I'm working with pharmacists, I might be working with people who have a background in medicinal chemistry or pharmacology or, public health, where norms might be different about order of authorship, what you acknowledge, the role of your PhD supervisor from the past. And I always say having those conversations early and often can normalize those behaviors that support people for strong writing. And finally, supporting participation in writing and accountability activities. You'll see this was an image from when I was at Monash University in Melbourne, and we were doing games in between our writing and reading exercises. And very recently, I saw one of my former team members had won, a best paper award, and I posted on LinkedIn. I said, there's a lot of coffees you owe us, because we used to say when you published a paper, you bought coffees for everybody else. And my colleague said, I'll buy you those coffees when you attend our shut up and write session. So those accountability activities can be fun. Talking about them, normalizing them, really makes people feel connected to that. So next slide, please. Another thing that I learned as a manager is it's very important that I include writing time in the division of effort that I assign to my staff each year, and that we review that annually. Personally, for me, when I got into a position that had dedicated time for scholarship, my scholarly productivity really increased. I know when I talk to people about that, if you say, I'm allocating all your time to teach all day, and you have to do this on your weekends and nights, that really doesn't set a very good example for how important it is or how much you're trying to support them. I think this is a modern world. Some of the most impactful things I've written have actually been on Wikipedia sites, where people from all over the world have been able to access them freely many, many times. I think as a manager, I've begun to pay more attention to what's called alt metrics versus historic methods. One example is earlier in my career, getting the opportunity to write a book chapter was something I could never even have imagined having that opportunity. Now, book chapters aren't actually cited very much, but they still take the same amount of time and energy to write. So when talking with my staff members, I sit down and we talk about what the best place to put their work is. I'm also much more diligent when assigning office housework. And that's kind of a funny way of saying that in my team, I used to say, hey, who wants to plan our holiday party? And who wants to, take care of this social activity? And in some cases, the same people would always put their hands up. Allowing that person to do something that they love, it helps me and probably makes them feel good. But at the end of the year, when I would look and say, did I give that person a fair shot at actually contributing to scholarship as compared to their colleagues who don't take on those committee leadership roles, mentoring roles, open days, etc. I also have started, instead of just, although I do publicize the work that my team does and try to amplify that on their behalf, I noticed that some people feel very comfortable telling their boss that they've published an article. Other people may not. So I worked with my library and I gave them the names of all the people on my team, and I allowed them to create a special kind of search that always searches for those names. And at the end of every newsletter, we always list the entire list. So it's not just the noisy songbirds that are greedy like me that happen to tell their boss about this. I make it equitable so that everybody gets that recognition. And I think what you can see from this diagram is this is over a 5-year period. The number of publications in our team, educational publications, went up substantially using some of these strategies, and the quality of our work also improved. We began to get our work into Q1 and Q2 journals with some of these strategies. And I think that the next thing I'll talk about is team participation. And our next speaker is a real expert in that. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tina. Some really good things to think about. And I especially want to check out those 2 books that you mentioned. I'm sorry, I accidentally muted myself. So the next speaker is Dr. Kristen Yankee. She's an educator and administrator at the University of Minnesota College of Pharmacy. As the director of the Walling Center for Innovation and Scholarship in Pharmacy Education, she works to support faculty in producing education-related scholarship. In 2017, she started the Writing Challenge, the RX Writing Challenge, to create a more open dialogue about the challenges in academic writing. And I think I joined that writing challenge from the very beginning and look forward to it every time it's offered.
Thank you.
Kristen.
I am thrilled to be here with this esteemed panel. Bala made me feel seen, like all those problems, even though I've been writing for years and maybe considered even productive in my writing, I still experience those challenges. So thanks for bringing those forward for us. And Tina, you know, your resources and your strategies so inspiring. So I hope to follow up and continue some of the trajectory here by talking a little bit about the RX Writing Challenge. I know early in my career, I felt the difficulty, and I'll say the word difficult, the challenge of writing. And if you would have asked me what to do to be productive as an early career person, I would have said, work hard. That the answer is to work hard, right? To set aside the time, nose to the grindstone, time, do the work, find a way to do the work. And as I've moved along in my career, I've surprised myself, because now when I think about how to be productive, I think about the social aspects of writing, that the emotional things that we encounter as we maybe don't have the time, or maybe don't get the greatest review back from reviewers. Those emotional things, you know, we can really address that with our colleagues. You know, they can lift us up, they can energize us. And I think working together is really something that can help us through those challenges as writers. So I was feeling the pressure and feeling like we weren't really talking about writing. We were all just sitting at our computers, at our keyboards and trying, but yet there wasn't a lot of open dialogue about it, at least in my environment. And so that's why I started the RX Writing Challenge. It was just a small group at first, but it's grown over time. And the goals really were to support us all collectively in creating time on task, because the papers do not write themselves. As much as I would like them to, They do not write themselves. So we need the time on task. But we also need the support of others in creating that environment where we can be productive. And I wanted a place where we could talk about difficulties, we could learn from one another, pick up strategies, just like we're doing this morning. And we could commit as a whole to experimenting. There are things that I thought I couldn't do as a writer. But for instance, writing in short periods of time. Ask me early in my career, I say, absolutely not. I need hours and hours in order to like get in the groove. I have learned to write in short periods of time, but it's taken some experimentation. It's taken some advice from others on how to really do that in a productive fashion. And so how can we experiment? How can we have this maybe I can kind of mentality and grow our abilities? And really examine what it is that we're doing so that we can improve as we move through our careers. I'm a very different writer now than I was 20 years ago as a result of others' experimentation and trying different strategies. So the writing challenge is about creating this kind of environment and achieving these goals. So next slide, please. What the writing challenge is a 14-day period of time that we run twice a year. And it's for focused attention on writing. I know for me, it's permission giving. I can say, okay, for these 14 days, I'm going to elevate writing priority a little bit more. I'm going to give myself the permission to set a few things aside for 30 minutes a day, just so I can focus that attention on writing. So we're promising each other, we're kind of all holding hands together and saying, I promise to write 30 minutes a day. That's it. Some days are good, some days are not as good, but the idea is to develop the habit of writing. And we're gonna talk some more about that this morning, I know. So what we do in the challenge is support one another through daily emails and some thoughts about writing, things that we might try and experiment with. We support one another on webinars about writing, and then we also talk to one another on social media and share our experiences during that 14-day period. So anyone can join. It's free to participate. We've got the URL here, and I'll drop it as well, or maybe someone else can grab it and drop it. So make it easy to sign up. And any kind of writing counts. Any kind of writing. So you might be doing ethics approval, you might be doing a proposal, you might be doing an abstract. Any kind of writing counts. So next slide, please. So this has grown over time. It's now a global thing for sure. We started in 2017, and it was just a casual group of people that kind of knew one another and knew we wanted to support one another in writing. But it first became organized in September 2018 when we started bringing together different journals to support webinars and started more actively on social media, the daily emails, the topic of each challenge. That first challenge was just 230 of us. Kind of spread around, but it gained momentum. People talk to people. We do more sessions like this, and others join us. So our next challenge is coming up, and we'd love to have you join us. On March 25th, we start, and we do 30 minutes a day, minus the weekends. Weekends are time off because we've done our work during the week, and we go till April 5th. So every challenge has a different topic. Different kinds of activities, people volunteer for things. This is all a community that makes it happen. So next slide, please. So we are now proudly at over 1,700 participants in 47 countries. It's exciting to see literally 24 hours a day, people making comments about how their writing went that day and asking questions and seeking advice out on social media. We do have local contacts in organizations. Those might be health systems, they might be government offices, they might be schools and colleges, but sometimes there is someone that wants to coordinate the people like Tina was talking about, maybe as a manager or has influence within the organization and wants to bring people locally together and have events locally as well. They might have a guest speaker, some roundtable conversations, a journal club to get that reading going. So we have local contacts as well. And then we have a number of journals that support us and give us advice about writing. So next slide, please. So my personal approach to writing has leaned heavily on Helen Sword. So we mentioned some books earlier. This is another one that I would recommend. Easy read, Air and Light and Time and Space, How Successful Academics Write. And she advocates for this acronym BASE that accounts for the behavioral habits. We all know that we need that time on task and the productivity, but also the artisanal habits, the social habits, and the emotional habits that go along with being a successful writer. Managing our emotions when we're super frustrated with reviewer number 2. We need to do that when we're feeling guilty. We need to manage those emotions. We need to draw our colleagues together, our co-authors. I have a pre-submission review coming up on Friday. It's another way to draw people together and give me confidence in actually submitting a paper to do a pre-submission review with my colleagues. So those social habits, and then challenging ourselves to be creative in the way that we present our data, the way that we present our arguments. So that is what I lean on and constantly reflecting on, like, how am I doing with my artisanal habits? You know, how can I promote that? Or how am I doing with my social habits? Oh, I'm feeling kind of isolated. I should reach out to my co-authors. So those are my comments for this morning. Thanks again for having me. And I think we're passing it back to Karen.
Yes, thank you so much, Kristen. I also have to put a plug in for the book. I think it's a really excellent book by Helen Sword. And she also has a cute quiz online you can take to see where you're doing with your behavioral, artisanal, social, and emotional habits. But I think that really resonates with me. So now I'd like to introduce our final speaker, Dr. Melody Ryan, who received her PharmD and Masters of Public Health degrees from the University of Kentucky. She completed a pharmacy practice residency at Duke University with a neurosciences fellowship at the University of Kentucky. She holds appointments as professor in the College of Pharmacy, Department of Pharmacy Practice and Science at the College of Medicine, Department of Neurology at the University of Kentucky. She is director of International Professional Student Education at the College of Pharmacy, and she's the assistant provost for Global Health Initiatives at the University of Kentucky. And I've been working with Melody, who is the chair of the subgroup for the section that is putting on this webinar. I've been working with her for the past 3+ years. And I asked her to speak today because she's a great example of how to increase your writing productivity in 30 minutes at a time on a daily basis. So thank you, Melody.
Thanks, KarenBeth. So I'm delighted to be with people today, and I wanted to I put my Duolingo up with my other social media stuff. If you all want to be with me on Duolingo, I'd love to have that too. So, you know, we're scientists, so I think it's good to start with looking at what does the literature show us. And there's not a ton out there, but I thought this particular paper really demonstrates something interesting, and it doesn't come from the hard sciences, but it comes from a smaller university that looked at 16 new faculty members across the university, so a small group, but 8 of them were self-identified binge writers, and they might write intently for a day at a time, 2 weeks at a time, something like that. And 8 that wrote in short writing sessions at least 3 days a week, and usually no more than an hour a day. And you can compare this, the number of sessions per month, right, on the left-hand side there. So the number of binges, the number of brief daily sessions. But I think the really important thing comes when you look at the productivity. So the bingers may have written intently for a while, but it's those people that write every day that really produce more pages per month and more manuscripts per year. So going to the next slide, I would like to just share my personal experience. So Kristen talked about the history kind of the RX Writing Challenge. And when I heard about it, I joined in April 2018, and I thought, oh, this is great, and I block out the time on my schedule, and I wrote, and well, the way it usually goes for me is the first couple days, I'm like, this is amazing. Why don't I do this all the time? 30 minutes is nothing. Look how much I'm getting done. And then about day 7, I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't have time for this, right? And, so then I'm struggling to kind of find it. And then by the end, I'm like, thank goodness that's over. So I did that for a few times. And then I was like, this is nuts. I should be blocking out my time all the time for this. And so I would start putting it on my calendar after the challenge was over. And I would do pretty well, usually for a week or 2, even 4 sometimes. And as we know from from learning about habits, whether it's smoking or whether it's something else we want a patient to not do. Often it takes several attempts for a habit to become something that you do consistently. And so it took a while from 2018 to 2021, but I've been writing daily consistently since then. And my current streak is 193 days on the weekdays. And what I've found, I'm not sure that I'm a lot more productive when I actually look at the numbers, but I'm a lot less frantic about it. And you don't, when you're picking it up every day, you don't have that time where you're trying to remember where you were and what you were doing and how this relates, and that 15 minutes or so to remember what's going on. Instead, I'm able to know exactly where I left off, pick it back up, and make those 30 minutes really count. Let's go to the next slide. So how does this work? I'm going to say this is a caveat, that this is really what works for me. And so maybe that works for you and maybe it doesn't. But I block the time, and I really block it. I don't sort of block it. Okay, so it's not one of those things that I go, oh, well, I don't have time, I'm just not going to do it. I look at it this way. The time is on my calendar, and if I had any other appointment on my calendar, I wouldn't just not show up for a meeting with someone. I wouldn't not show up to teach class, right? So I'm not going to not show up to do this. So I do really block the time on my calendar every day. Now I'll move it. If someone asks me for a meeting, I'll move it around and shuffle it, but I do prioritize it. I do it early in the day, and I find it's best that day. So where I am, it is 7:30 in the morning, and I've been on since 6:30, and I have not had time to do my writing yet today, and it's making me a little nervous that I haven't done it. So what I like to do is make it part of my morning routine. I think about, 3 things that make me feel like I've been productive before I even start my day. I go to the gym, I do Duolingo, and I do my writing. So those are 3 things I've done for myself before anything else begins. So I think that is a good mental thing for me. I also am really motivated by streaks, and I put my Duolingo streak up for you all. So I find that really important to not see that little owl like being very sad that I'm not doing my language lessons. So when I really started being productive with the 30 minutes a day writing, I found an app called Habit Share, and there are others, but this one is free and it's easy to use, and you can set a streak for anything. So that is what I use to track that, and I really like seeing that number go up, and I like punching the button that says that I did it for that day. So let's go to the next slide. Some other things that help me is thinking about a new mindset. Everybody's probably done that exercise, thinking about something you do every day, whether it's your coffee habit, but those things add up over time. So for instance, if you had a $5 cup of coffee for 20 days out of the month, that's $100 a month or $1,200 a year. And if you write 30 minutes a day, that adds up too. So I think that is a really important thing to think about. I do think it's nice to involve others. When I was fairly young in my career, I had a group of people and we wrote a lot together, and that's very helpful because sometimes you're the lead, sometimes someone else is the lead. All of those things are making you more productive. However, there's a big caveat on there, is that you need to think about how you're going to involve others and know that you may be getting great collaboration, but it could slow you down. And I would say, above all, you need to just do it like you do every other task on your calendar. I know some people really want to, kind of find their happy place, and they get their cup of tea and they get their cozy slippers and they get all their things ready. I just sit down and do this because that's what I need to do for the day. So, and then I can check it off, and that makes me feel good, and I keep my streak up, and that makes me feel good. So you need to figure out what works for you on that, but for me, it's just getting it done. So next slide. So the moderators asked me to talk a little bit about involving other people in your writing. So I think you need to think about this. So there's some real benefits. It adds perspective. It gives you those ideas that you might not get, or a new take on something that you might not get if you're just working by yourself. I don't think we should overlook the idea of commiseration, right? So it's someone else to complain with, which is nice, or to say we're never going to get this done or whatever. It also adds accountability. If you have someone else who's depending on you for something, I think that helps you get it done. It's sort of a built-in peer review. You don't have to do all the work yourself. And of course, it's very good for helping your students or other trainees. So what's the flip side? What's wrong with group work? Well, it is group work. So somebody probably won't do their part. You might have to step in and do someone's work. You know, sometimes you'll have 6 people working on one sentence and you're like, this is not a great use of time, right? If you are putting it together at the end, you may have to put together really different writing styles and different ideas, and they have to be kind of pushed together. It definitely takes longer. And sometimes you have to manage other people's feelings and egos to make sure that you're not, especially with trainees, that you're not harsh with them or make it difficult for them. Okay, and another slide. So when speaking specifically about trainees and students, some things I've found helpful over time with writing with them is to be really clear about the expectations. I find a lot of students like the idea of writing a paper, but you know, they really underestimate the amount of time it takes, and so on. And sometimes they leave, right, and it's not done. So I try to be really clear about, if I have to take this over and do it, I'm going to become the first author, and so on. I do force them to make a timeline at the beginning with the end in mind. I want to have this done by a certain time, so here's all the steps. And then we revisit that regularly every time we meet. If you already have all your data or your topic or whatever, it's good to go on and have your audience and a journal in mind. It just saves you time. As Tina said, I require them to read a lot, because the more you read, the better you write. You know, it helps you organize your thoughts, it helps you recognize leaders in the field, and so on. I also have them watch a lot of tutorials, for instance, on how to do a literature search. You would think they would have learned that by the time they get to pharmacy school, but that's not always true. How to use reference software like EndNote, and then I make them do an outline. A lot of the time they don't want to do that, but we make that happen. And so that's been really successful for me as well. And then they start filling in from there. And so I'll wrap it up there and turn it back over to KarenBeth.
Thank you, Melody. Lots of good tips for us. And one thing I wanted to also just comment on is, I think with the writing 30 minutes a day habit, one of the most important things for me is not losing track of where you're going with your writing. Because if I have long gaps in my writing, then I like to spend so much time trying to figure out where I was and what I was trying to do. So let's see here. It's time for the Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and close out the slides now, bring us all back on the screen. And we will, Nicole will help us moderate the questions.
All right, thank you so much, KarenBeth. That was very exciting to hear from all the speakers. And we do have some questions in the Q&A box. If you do have any additional questions, please post them in the Q&A. So our first question is regarding, what are the opportunities for undergraduates to serve as a research assistant and to improve on their skills for scientific writing, such as volunteering for a research program?
Shall I take the question then? Maybe I can add in some input from my personal experience. I do have a PhD student, master students. Undergraduate student, usually we have undergraduate final year project. That will be one of the platform where they can actually learn how to write their research program and everything. Another aspect is, depending on the researcher over here, I mean, depending on the educators. They might want some research assistant, then they can take them according to the availability. Thanks.
Thank you, Bala.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, Nicole. I was just going to say, I think it might vary by where you are, and you might have to ask several different people, be persistent. And I started as a student with my writing journey. I started in pharmacognosy, pharmacology, med chem, and then I finally got a yes in social pharmacy. And guess where I ended up? Social pharmacy. So it is tough, but that feeling that's uncomfortable, you just kind of roll through it, and keep your spirit up and sort of keep asking.
Thank you for adding that, Tina. Yeah, so there's definitely opportunities out there. It may be discouraging, but definitely don't be discouraged and keep pushing through these opportunities that are available for you. Our next question from Chitradeep Sen was asking, what are some suggestions in terms of a modern approach or opportunities to improve your writing technique?
I feel like Kristen should answer this one. She's like queen of improving your technique.
Well, the first thing that came to mind was something that Tina mentioned, which is reading other people's writing. You know, we are attracted to certain authors, sometimes because of the content, but also because of the style. And so, you know, kind of reading with the sense of what are they doing that is really drawing me in, that is having this impact. So I think deciphering other people's writing can be really helpful. But the other thing that came to mind is co-writing. Who am I writing with? How am I choosing those co-authors? What do they bring to the table that's maybe different than mine, and what can I learn from them in the process? And even just actively being together at the same time on a Google Doc and watching them kind of make their argument or state their point, I think can be really fascinating and a way to develop our own skills. And like, oh, I can follow suit. I see where you're going there, you know, and kind of build on one another.
All right, thank you so much, Kristen. So for our next question was regarding collaboration, which is one of the key challenges for our audience today. So what are your experiences with partnerships or collaborations to promote writing productivity and accountability? And do you have any tips specifically for a junior researcher?
I'll say something, but then I want others to jump in. For a junior researcher, and for myself as well, I am a big advocate for pre-submission reviews. And so how do I get a group of critical friends together, right? Colleagues that I trust, to look at my material before I send it to the journal. And not people to just say, oh, it's great, you know, like, and then I send it in and get ripped to shreds by the peer reviewer, right? Like I want a group of critical friends that wants to see me succeed, that will give me comments to help improve the paper before it gets to the journal. And I think that can be really constructive, and it builds my confidence too in like pushing submit, like finally letting it go and pushing submit because I've had these people look at it already.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, I was just going to add that in our team we started, and I think Kristen taught me, it's starters and finishers. I call it drafters and editors. But some people in our team felt really comfortable just putting words on paper. They get it out of their head. It's not perfect. Other people are very, very good at every aspect of the punctuation and parallel verbs. And so we not only started, making sure that we were pre-reviewing each other's work, but we would also we started to gravitate towards where we felt, most comfortable. So someone might look at it conceptually, but not look at the grammar at all. And somebody might really look at how things were presented. And, so I think you can almost, ask your colleagues to play a specific role in how they review your work.
Thank you so much, Tina. So I believe that's the amount of time that we have allotted for our Q&A session. And if you're not able to address any of your questions, our contact information will be available at the end of our presentation.
Okay,
All right.
so I'm going to let Nicole cover this.
All right, everyone. So thank you again for sticking around for our webinar. We do want to mention a potential opportunity to be involved in getting connected, to help with collaboration, support, and accountability as well. So the FIP Academic Pharmacy Section Scholarship Work Group is planning on creating either partnerships or groups to kind of promote these skill sets. For the writing partnership specifically, we were thinking of having two individuals with similar interests in research or writing to be paired up to collaborate on their writing endeavors. So some of the benefits include that with having these shared goals and like a mindset or specialties, this will kind of help everyone's motivation and your commitment towards writing. The partners could also help with accountability by having regular check-ins to ensure that there's progress, as well as resource sharing in terms of any relevant literature or expertise. And for the accountability groups, we were planning on creating a group of individuals, potentially in the same time zone to make it easier for meeting up online regularly to kind of discuss your writing progress, challenges, and provide support. So the advantage of having the group is that not only do you have this consistent writing schedule with the meetups, but you also receive encouragement and constructive feedback from a wider audience, and you can discuss your challenges, experiences, and suggestions from a diverse perspective as well. So if you are interested in either the partnerships or the accountability groups, please proceed on to our post survey on our next slide. So this is our post survey. We'll be collecting anonymous responses in terms of your personal action plans based on our webinar today, as well as your interests in terms of the paired writing, partnership, or accountability groups. And finally, a link to sign up if interested for this year's RX Writing Challenge that'll be taking place from March 15 to April 5th. So please note that the survey will close in 2 hours after the webinar ends. So if you're interested, please make sure you complete the survey before then, and you will hear back from the scholarship work group in about the next few weeks or so. And we'll also post the post survey link in the chat as well to make it easier. So please save that or bookmark that if you don't have time right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole. I also posted the link in the chat if you don't have a way to do the QR code right now. I just want to remind you about some of the few ending things. FIP is regularly putting on digital events, and so please check back at their events.fip.org for more opportunities to learn. And also, I hope we see you all at the FIP World Congress in September, beginning of September in Cape Town. And since we are wrapping up a little early, we weren't sure how long it was going to take for us to do the last part. You can go ahead and do the survey, but we can also address a few other questions, I think. Let me go ahead and stop the video and, whoops, not my video, the share. And, oh, actually, and then at the very end, I'll put, well, actually, maybe I'll put our email addresses up. Sorry, let me share the screen again because we have our email addresses that you can take down if you have further questions. There we go. I'll leave that
I
up.
did want to address, somebody had asked a question about the RX Writing Challenge being for European and American audiences, but that is really just not the case. Unless there's a reason you can't access the website or something like that in your country, you are most welcome to join. We have writers from all over the world.
maybe to end on a word of encouragement, maybe, I just want to let folks know that, writing is a journey. If you maybe haven't thought about it that way, but it's a journey, not just the individual manuscript, but over your lifetime. And I am a very different writer than I was 20 years ago. And so the way you're feeling about your writing right now, that may change over time, and that's okay, and that's good. And you may have ups and downs and all of that, but together we kind of persevere through that with our co-authors and in writing communities. So I really encourage the accountability buddies and the partnerships that you're being offered here in this session.
I'm really excited to see if there are people that are interested in getting together to write. And also, again, to let you know about the upcoming ARCS challenge. On that survey, there is a link to join, like officially, like let our working group know that you're joining. Melody coordinates that. So there's a link on that. And then also you saw Kristen's link, and that link may actually be in the survey as well. But you can just, if you need to find it, just Google RX Writing Challenge. University of Minnesota, you could add that as well, and you'll definitely find the link there. And for those of you out there, you might consider that want to join, if you have friends that want to join, you might consider doing some like a kickoff event, like having several people to get together on day one and say, okay, we're going to all write together in this room. Or if you're across the world, we're going to get on Zoom together, or just even like in spirit, like, oh, we're not going to be together, but we're all going to commit that we're going to write at the same time together. One thing that I've done at my university in the past is we got together, and then on a whiteboard, we all wrote one goal that we had for the writing session or for the whole challenge. And then at the end of, I think we actually had a longer time frame, so about 2 hours or so, we said, what we got accomplished. And it's amazing what you can actually get accomplished when you set your mind to it. And I do think that having your peers together really is helpful. Anybody, any have last comments or thoughts?
Yeah, KarenBeth, there are a couple of people asking for the post survey to be posted again.
Oh, sure, yes.
And I see several people saying, will the slides and the recording be made available? And I believe those will be on the FIP website, events website.
Yes, they will. Actually, it doesn't take very long to get that done either. There's the post survey link again. So thank you very much to all of our speakers. Really appreciate you joining at all the different time zones that we're in. And thank you to all of the people who attended, and happy writing. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.